I do want to let everybody know it's 2 o'clock, but we're going to wait about 10 minutes to start because they had an event at the African American Museum and it ran a little longer, and there are some people coming here from there, so we want to give them plenty of time. So we'll probably wait about 10 minutes or so and make sure everybody gets in. So it's fun to know. Oh,
Yeah, if you got locked in here, you'd probably be okay. At least you got
Yeah, that might, you got the knowledge.
Yeah, you got a hunger for knowledge, but I don't know that necessarily exactly.
That'd be a phone.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Slice it really thin.
Like that King's Trio song about the guy who trapped on the subway because he had the fare and people were sandwiches. King's Trio song, I think it was called. This guy got on the subway, fare, didn't have any money. Riding the subway and his friends go to the station and first you'd think they could have fare so he could get off. So that would have made a real short song. The toilet is trains and toilets. They're commuter trains. They're pretty well dead.
How fast was the train going? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the song really impressed. Well, it was a song. It wasn't the book. I mean, it didn't go into all the details. You researched all that, didn't you? I think there was some information. I think so. You know, like when there's a movie and they say, inspired by a real incident or based. So it's like, okay. We went to we went camping one time in Colorado.
got a couple of students with me.
Town. They were getting something in.
I saw Marley, I heard Marley
Skillet Talk. Yeah.
It was on the Hawaii. It was
How
on
far you could go, I guess, to cast out Skillet.
like a
birds or something.
I hit a boat ball. I don't know where they held it exactly. Probably somewhere that people could get out of the way because if it rained, Skillet. Get there, definitely.
Yeah.
Gonna be hurt.
Oh, yes.
Good people meet in good places. I don't agree with that. Oh, okay.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay, excuse me.
This morning she was amazing. She's over.
Very nice, If you like, because I told them we would start yeah, go ahead. Yes, yeah, we're going to so we're going to wait about 10 minutes if you want to. We still have people coming in from the program at the African American Museum. But like this gentleman, he needed to go to the restroom, he couldn't get up and do anything like that. We'll have plenty of time. We're so
Don't you son his daughter? Well, you're just pretty like your mom. I
last day of
What did y'all get tonight? Were you sitting or was it
it's
already?
legal. You don't have to.
No, it was just been,
You can homeschool.
well, I guess, I live, remember.
And finish or just go to work. And
I just remember my dad taught me up until the lesson I learned.
at certain days.
There's that people coming in.
I hope you changed those.
Because things may start to melt.
Well, then, if that happens, then you got all this contamination.
Right. And then it's open.
I hear them. It's turned up out there. Don't you want to try to
Shack singing. Singing at the bottom of the
Even something as simple as
Some late tutor.
you say, hey, no big deal.
It's all over.
Then they will deny your physical lessons for 5 years. And then you have to pay us $5,000. Then,
Like that, because she's in turn.
That social ostracism is different.
Just about to be free.
The Amish call it shunning.
the scarlet letter.
Kind of start getting ready.
Where's our favorite place?
It was a, but we're taking it to a function.
You change it to beef.
Yes, but I think we should kind of start
When you gotta do it, you think it's right.
Very heavy.
Hi, how are you?
I love piano classes. He has a Oh, you are
Really well? See them walk away.
I'm gonna tell my grandma.
So that's his big claim to fame.
Been last year.
I'm the man of beer. Tough.
Not really understandable, but
We got to be good.
Test, test. We got it. Something secret?
You want to pull it over a little bit more?
I didn't watch you.
Oh, yeah. You can do that.
No, it's okay. No.
I think we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to forego the microphone, if you can all hear me. Can you hear me? No? Okay. I'm not too familiar with them, so is that better?
There's
Turn it on.
a button on the top.
Oh, I guess that would help. Here we go. No, go ahead. Here's our sound man. There you go.
You can use the, that one. We know it's working.
All right, is this a little better? Yes. All right, thank you. First of all, good afternoon, and I want to welcome you all to the Claremounts Public Library. I am Ann Preston, and I'm the oral history coordinator for the Carnegie History Center, which is right across the tracks, as you know, but a part of the library system. And we're very delighted to have you all here for today's event. And this event is a part of the National Endowment for the Humanities program called Created Equal: America's Civil Rights Struggle. So this program involves and shares 4 powerful documentaries, and they are The Loving Story, Freedom Riders, The Abolitionists, and Slavery by Another Name. And these documentaries connect the story of America's long civil rights movement. And this program seeks to enhance awareness and also to encourage community discussion on the concepts of freedom and equality and citizenship. So dates and the films and the locations of the following films you can find on a little green flyer. It's on the back table. And that will have the following 3, because this is a total of 4 programs for the entire work here. And today's program addresses interracial marriage, and we will be showing a part of the film. We're not showing the full film, The Loving Story. And Loving was actually this couple's last name, and it is their story. And that will be followed by a panel discussion and a question and answer period. And we welcome you to, at that time, tell your stories and your experiences with this issue. We will start off by showing about 30 minutes of the film, and then we will then the film, if you want to see the full film, it will be available at the library to be checked out. And eventually all these films will be available in the library system. And we do hope that you want to do that. Now today, for our moderator, we are very honored to have Sonny Nash.
as the moderator for this event. Most of you know Sunny as the author of Big Mama Didn't Shop at Woolworths, but she is also a photographer, a blogger on race relations, a producer, and a singer. She is truly a Renaissance woman. So without further ado, I think I've used up all the words I need to use. I also want to mention our other panelists, but I will let Sunny give their full introductions. And we have Sid Cassone, and we also have Bill Watkins. And now I will turn the mic over to Sunny, so please help me to welcome Sunny Nash.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. I'm just so delighted to have all of you come and partake of this program with us. As Ann said, it is a National Endowment for the Humanities program, and it was originally created to commemorate the Emancipation Proclamation. And what we're going to do today is look at the history of miscegenation laws in the United States as they applied to the Loving couple in 1958. Miscegenation laws have been on the books in this country since 1661. The first one appeared in the state of Maryland. The second one appeared in the state of Virginia in 1662, and that is where the Lovings lived. When they got married in 1958, they went to Washington, D.C. in order to get married. And when they came home, they were arrested in their bedroom by the local authorities, and they were placed in jail and charged with anti-miscegenation laws against them. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that in terms of current issues that people have against them today. We're also going to talk about how the media has changed the way the world and, of course, our country looks at race relations. And for those discussions and your later questions, we'll talk to Bill Watkins. Bill has a very interesting history because he's been in media since media began. And he hired me, so I've been in media for a very long time, for at least half as long as Bill. And so he's going to talk about what race relations, the changes that we have seen in race relations over the course. You know what? I'm going to turn off this other microphone. Maybe that'll help. Okay. And he's going to talk about what changes have occurred because of the changes in the media over the last 40 years or so. That's how long ago I worked for Bill, so I can say that for sure. I know you've been in the media business for 40 years. And Sid Cassone is a historian, and she also is a biologist. She has collected all kinds of artifacts, African artifacts, and she is now in the process of cataloging things that she has in her collection. And she's going to, go ahead.
The collection came from Thabiti Ngozi, and it's for the nonprofit organization called the Brazos Valley Festival of African Arts. And when he passed, I had big shoes to fill, and only recently realized that I was intended to do so. So anyway, just to let you know what's going on with that. Yeah,
that's really good to know, because we want to make sure that, you know, the originating parties in that collection have their get credit for that. So can everybody hear me? Is this loud enough? Okay. So to get started, before we see the film, I just wanted to give a little bit more background on the Lovings. In their community, they were from a very rural community in Virginia. So they were, in the mid-50s and mid-century, they were pretty isolated because there weren't that many television stations, especially in places where they could see them. Their lives were isolated. They were very secluded in that they were not well traveled, but they were a very close community, and they did not know, at least that's what they said, they did not know there were laws against them getting married.
Why did they go to Washington?
They went to Washington because they wanted to have their honeymoon there. That's what they said on their documentary. And I often question that same thing. I was wondering why they would go to another place to get married if they did not know that it was against the law to get married where they were. But they insisted. They went there because they wanted to spend their honeymoon in Washington. They wanted to go to the city, and it wasn't that far away. So when they got back home, they were pulled out of their bed and they were arrested, and they went through several years of litigation. They did not want to be in the political arena. They had no intentions of becoming icons in politics or in public relations or race relations or anything else. All they wanted to do was to be married and have their family. And their friends and their family, their mother and fathers and all their cousins and relatives were pretty supportive of their marriage, even though it was taboo in those times. They hid them when they had to after they got out of jail. They also helped them to establish a home. They helped them to get work. And all they wanted to do was raise their family. They had two sons and a daughter, to get their case before the U.S. Supreme Court. And when that case came up, the Lovings decided they were not going to go to hear the argument. They just didn't want the publicity. They didn't want to be bothered. Mr. Loving, Richard Loving, told his attorneys to tell the court, plead to the judges, I love my wife. That's all he wanted them to say. I love my wife. And she wouldn't go either because they wouldn't go anywhere, one without the other. So anyway, we've got the movie queued up to a point where I think it's going to show some, we'll see where it is. I think it's going, we would like to show you a little bit about this family, about what they did at home and how they related to each other.
I'd like to see the lawyer's arguments. Seems that law would be unconstitutional, even in the 50s.
Well, actually, it was unconstitutional, as the judges eventually indicated.
Oh,
and it
good.
was Judge Warren, who had also been the judge who...
He was a good man.
Yes, he was. He was the one who had decided, he was the Chief Justice during the Brown versus the Board of Education.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of knew how it was going to come out because Warren was on the board.
Right.
We have a technical thing, so I can go on. During the time, just before the court decided that case, the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came out. That was in January.
Sidney
And-
Poitier?
Yes, Sidney Poitier. They also, there was a lot of discussion as to whether the judges had seen that movie and had based their decision on that movie. Because the case didn't come up until June of 67. So everybody in the country, half the people in the country had seen the movie by then. And so they thought, okay, the judges have been definitely influenced by this movie, but they swore that was not the case. This was just the time for them to decide this case, and there was no reason they could continue to persecute and prosecute people for being married.
Right.
Turn this on.
That's Richard's mother. She was always around. She
She was greatly involved with her grandchildren and her daughter-in-law, and it wasn't an issue for her. As a matter of fact, would you want to get Larry?
Yeah, I'll go get him.
Mildred Loving was part Native American as well. She was part of one of the Virginia tribes. But it didn't matter, because even if she hadn't been part Native American and she'd been whole Native American, it still was against the law in Virginia for a white person to marry a non-white person. And she tried to use that as part of the defense, but it didn't work. She was still, the one-drop rule made her an African American.
Well, but so the one-drop rule would have made her an Indian.
It didn't matter, even if she was an Indian or Native American, it was against the law for her to marry a white person.
Described him as a very warm man, very affable, very friendly, equally comfortable in any setting. Whether he was with a group of white men, whether he was with a group of black men, he could blend and mix with any people.
In Central Point, we used to gather at one place. It was just a curve, and people just parked there and have beers and everything. So Richard was always there. Well, he was part of the neighborhood.
I mean, we just grew up all as a family together. We never knew nothing about all of this racial stuff that they talk about. And if the government had left them people alone, it would never been no problem there. There was no difference in them, you know, they were all working for trying to make a living. And just because they didn't go to the same church didn't mean that they weren't good people.
The families then were so close. If you had a crop, you had to get it in. Well, you called the neighbors to come over. And everybody worked with everybody. But that was just the way life was in Caroline County. Remember hearing the children kind of snickering back and forth about that family, mixing with the black a lot. And I used to think it was sad because my mom had always taught us from babies, little children, if you didn't have anything good to say about someone, not to say anything at all. And that used to really bother me, so I would come home and I'd ask my mom questions. They found out that my mother was a loving, and they used to worry me about it. And I would ask Mom about that, and she would say, well, we were always told we weren't any kin to them.
Richard lived down in the community where most of the Indians lived. I don't know if Mildred had any Indian in her or not. Possibly could have. And if they got romantically involved or whatever, they kept it to themselves. Because everybody knew that there was a no-no. That was against the law. So, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying they kept it undercover.
It was just about every weekend, and someone would gather and someone would bring in a musical instrument, and the next thing you know, you had 2 or 3 more, and people were just dancing and having a good time. The sheriff, he stopped by one Saturday evening, and he was looking at driver's license. So some people went for white, and some Indian, but some Indians were for white too, you know, on the driver's license. So he tore everybody's license up. And then he's talked to see who was going to drive the cars for that licenses. So, and he had the power to do it. He was a sheriff, you see.
Garnet was a very stern man, and he did things his way. He didn't get along well with the black people. He in my opinion, was a little bit prejudiced. And the blacks knew he was that way. I don't think it all came down. When he found out where they were living, he went down there at 4 o'clock in the morning and knocked the door down and went in and got them and put them in jail. They stayed in jail until the trial. And Judge Bazile, that's when he evicted them out of the county. You know, I lived beside Sheriff Brooks all my life. And let's just say that he had ways of doing things that I didn't approve of.
Mr. Loving, the court of Virginia found you guilty of violating their laws, and what did they tell you had to do? Were you supposed to divorce, or what?
They said I had to leave the state.
And what happened after that?
Well, I left.
And took your wife with you?
That's right.
As you
about to feel about it again. If it's necessary, I'll leave again and take her. I'm not going to divorce her.
DC was very miserable. She felt, totally divorced from the world. Aside from the fact that she had been banished there and was living there because some judge had said that you can't live with your husband in Virginia, she never really adapted to city life. Growing up in the country in a rural area where she had room and her children had room to play, being in the city just was not what she was accustomed to.
We came home one Christmas and I was born. We were here in Virginia. They could come back separate. They couldn't come back together. But knowing them, they probably came back together. My daddy was very firm. He didn't say much, but when he put his mind to something, he's going to do it. And when they wanted to come back to Virginia for any reason, they're going to come back together. And, they just take that chance. Once they got back, they might have been shaky about being rearrested. Friends will let them know, if they hear anything. Little conversations, and it's kind of like a whisper. No, we're not supposed to be here. We're hiding.
My great uncle's house, we called it the big house, but it was actually a boarding house. That certainly made it easier to slip in and out unnoticed. I would always know when Mildred was in town because the children, usually the oldest boy, Sidney, would come over and we would play. And I often played with Sidney, just the two of us. And sometimes the other younger siblings would play with us as well. And then I knew that Mildred was there in the house visiting her sister, Garnet. And then later on in the evenings, we would see Richard coming in, usually from the other direction. You never saw him outside. he was always inside the house.
The children didn't have anywhere to play. They would like being caged, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't take it. My older son came back and told me that Donald had been hit by a car. I didn't know what to do. I know I had to go to him, but I didn't know if he was dead or... He was sitting up in the street crying. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had to get out of there. I was so unhappy. I was complaining to my cousin constantly. So one Saturday, I guess she got tired of it. She told me, she said, write to Bobby Kennedy. He'll help you. That's what he's up there for.
Just 100 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves, 200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come by train, they come by bus and by air. They come from the north, the south, the east and west. They come united in one cause, to urge Congress to pass a civil rights bill to end forever the blight of racial inequity. This great throng with a cause gathers us all.
I wasn't involved with the civil rights movement. The only thing I know is what everybody saw in the news. I knew Dr. King was out there. I never met him. I would have loved to, but I didn't. I wasn't in anything concerning civil rights. We were trying to get back to Virginia. That was our goal, to get back home.
Look at him. Now bought me my beach. One of the 12, one of the 6. How did you find out what to do? Hey!
She wrote to, we write to?
And to Robert Kennedy. And did he answer? Yeah. And he told me to, he said there was nothing he could do but to write to the American Civil Liberties League. And I wrote to them, and I told them what happened. Mr. Kennedy asked me to write to him, and I guess it was about a week, and Mr. Bourne called me and told me that he was going to take the case.
Well, when Mr. and Mrs. Loving were having their problems, they wrote to the Attorney General of the United States, who was then Robert Kennedy, and asked if the civil rights bills that were being discussed in Congress at that time, let's see, I guess it was 1963, would give them any relief from their problem. And he wrote back and told them that it would not, but suggested that they get in touch with the American Civil Liberties Union. Here's the date, so we can be sure that was June 20th, 1963, and they were living in Washington, D.C. at the time. Dear sir, I am writing to you concerning a problem we have. 5 years ago, my husband and I were married here in the district. We then returned to Virginia to live. My husband is white. I am part Negro and part Indian. At the time, we did not know there was a law in Virginia against mixed marriages. Therefore, we were jailed and tried in a little town of Bowling Green. We were to leave the state to make our home. We have 3 children and cannot afford an attorney. We wrote to the Attorney General. He suggested that we get in touch with you for advice. Please help us if you can. Hope to hear from you real soon. Yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Richard Loving. And it was that simple letter that got us into this not-so-simple case.
Now, I feel that God had a purpose in creating the racist Texans. I am so proud of Negroes who are proud of being Negroes. They are what God made them. And I'm proud of being white because I am what my white race has made me. I'm I'm white today because my parents practiced segregation. And I wouldn't be anything but white. And I love Negroes who wouldn't be anything but Negroes.
Okay, we all get the point.
She's still alive.
He's a real diplomat.
Just don't point at each other.
Just wanted to give you a little glimpse of the Lovings before we go into any discussion. I wanted to let Sid first. Bill Loving. I wanted to save you for last.
Save the best.
Save the best for last. But I wanted Sid to share with the audience her own personal experience with this topic on 2 levels, as a matter of fact. I'd like for you to tell them about your experience in Seattle. And I would also like for them to know, if you don't mind sharing, your racial heritage. Okay.
Okay, sure. Well, when you're looking at me here, what do you see? What color am I?
White.
If I had been married to a white man during this time and anyone had told on me, my marriage would have been illegal.
Right.
Because my great-great-grandfather was African on my mother's side. And I didn't know this until I was an adult. The family kept it all pretty quiet. But my uncle that raised me was a very tall, skinny man with very high cheekbones, very close, curly hair, and very dark skin. And he would always talk about how, he tanned a lot. We lived in Seattle. Anyway, so I never really thought about it. But as an adult, I started to do some digging into things and discovered my genealogy on my great-great-grandmother's side. She was Sami, which is indigenous to the Scandinavian Sweden, the indigenous people there. And when she came across to the United States, she met this man who had come up into Canada. They met up above Michigan and then moved down into Michigan. Anyway, so that's a little bit of my background. There's also Algonquin there, but so I was surprised to find that out. And it was proven because I went up to take care of my brother who was fighting cancer, and we did stem cell transplants, and they ran the DNA panels, and there it was. It's like, whoa, okay. They weren't kidding. So the one-drop rule would have applied to myself back in the day, and if somebody had told on me, because you couldn't have told by looking at me. So that being said, things have turned around since this time, haven't they? We've come a long way. I'll tell you a little story. In 2004, I was on a date with my now life partner, who is a 6'2" African-American man, who is actually also Native American and Irish, and but you wouldn't know it by looking at him. We were just having a glass of wine up in Seattle. It was officially our first date, and he leaned over and kissed me, and next thing we knew, we were absolutely drenched in some kind of vodka drink. Two kind of redneck guys in the bar decided that we shouldn't be doing that, and they doused us with their drinks when we were sitting at the table. And the owner of the bar asked us to leave so there wouldn't be any trouble. This is 2004 in a progressive place in this country. But we were in a little neighborhood community, and I guess it was okay there to treat people that way.
And what is really interesting is the fact that they did not know you were an African-American woman.
Yeah. Just a little bit, though. They couldn't tell. I don't know. Anyway, but there are more instances in my life. I was at first going to tell you each of these stories and then have you guess when they happened, but I'll do it a little differently now. I'll tell you another story about two women traveling cross country and realizing they were dangerously low on gas, which doesn't usually happen. They're usually smarter than that. And so they pull off the road and have to go quite a ways down. There was a gas station sign, but they just kept going and going and finally came to the gas station. And a man came out in a pair of overalls, and I was waiting for banjo music. He was interesting. And no front teeth, very, it was just, he said, y'all need some gas? And we said, yeah. And, well, you better hurry up and gas up quick, because the two of you shouldn't be seen around these parts after dark. Well, it was me and my then partner, who was a black woman. And we were traveling across country. And so we hurried up and gassed up and got out of there because it was twilight and we were scared to death at that point. We didn't know what could happen, if they were going to follow us. They got in their truck and did kind of follow us a little after we left, and we didn't know what might happen, but they didn't chase us.
What state were you in?
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Off of I-10. Yeah.
Gee.
Off of I-10. Yeah. We were just
In
going
2004?
Hmm?
In 2004?
No, this was in 1999.
You jest.
No. Another story. In the year 2001, we were performing at a charity benefit in Dallas. A very, very high-end, lots of very well-dressed people giving their good intentions in large dollar amounts. And during the break, after we'd been performing for about an hour, we were standing in line to get some food. And the woman that I was with was asked to please go get another bottle of wine because this one was empty. She wasn't working. She had just been on stage for an hour singing for these people, and they clapped for her. But twice during that break, she was asked to go to the kitchen and get something because of her color. And that's in 2001 in Dallas.
Well, there's a lot of Republicans in Dallas.
Yeah. 2008. Come up a little closer to the present. 2008, leaving a dinner party. My partner and I, that I'm with now, we were at a dinner party in a nice neighborhood. One of the professors at the university is a dear friend of mine. And we were leaving, driving down in through an upper middle class neighborhood, and we got pulled over. We were followed for about half a mile, and then we were pulled over. And when they pulled us over, they asked us to get out of the car. And then they said, we have reason to believe that you have marijuana on your person or in your vehicle. And first of all, we don't use it, so it's never been in the car as far as we know. And knowing that, I got a little bit scared because it was kind of a dark part of the road in the neighborhood, and there was no traffic because it was 11 o'clock at night. And we got out of the car, and I stood there and fumed while they searched the car, and they were desperately trying to find something. They found nothing. And then I realized I recognized one of them. And I turned to him and I said, "You don't know who I am?" And he said, "You look familiar." And I said, "I was leading the DARE band for 6 years, and you were a rookie shaking my tambourine back in 1997. And he was like, "Oh," and he hit the other guy and he goes, let's leave them alone. And I said, "Well, the reason we stopped you is because that your friend here looks a lot like a kid at Bryan High School that we've been having some trouble with." This is a 46-year-old man. He looked with a gray streak. Okay. So these things are still happening. We are not out of the woods.
Right.
We are, we're pretty deep into them still, I think. As long as we continue to talk about our separateness and our differences, we are like a chicken coop full of white leghorn chickens pecking on that one black feather of that one poor chicken that looks a little different than the rest of them. We got to rise above that. And I think that this is a good start in this community, because the people believe that we've accomplished something already, that the civil rights movement happened, it's over, everybody's equal. Not yet.
Not yet.
I can tell you a story about this gentleman. Right after the civil rights movement was fading into the Black Power movement, Bill Watkins, who was owner and general manager of country radio station WTAW, decided that times should change. We need a black broadcaster out there, and there was not one who had been in mainstream radio or television. There were some specialty radio programs on just for African Americans or just for Mexican Americans, but there had not been a mainstream news broadcaster. Bill heard a voice on a radio commercial, and he said, I really want to get a female voice in here, and I like that voice. I want that voice. And so he asked the producer to find him that voice. And I walked into his office, and that was that voice. And he said, okay, all right. And he recovered so quickly, it was just amazing. And he said, do you want the job? I said, yeah, I was in school, I needed the job. And he shoved the recorder to me, and he said, the College Station City Council meets at 6:30, and I want a sound bite. And I went, oh my God. What's a sound bite? Anyway, that was in 1973. And he broke the barrier and started this whole trend, and it hasn't stopped. We've had black broadcasters on radio and television ever since. He can talk to you about what his experience was during that time and how the media helped to change race relations in the Brazos Valley. So I'm going to let you talk about that, Bill.
Well, here I am again, a token redneck. Can you imagine the courage and tenacity it took for a 17 to 19-year-old girl to take a microphone and run without any training and experience into the council meeting and stick a microphone in the face of the most powerful white men in the county and ask them hard questions? I mean, this girl, had what it takes to make it work, because she took the ball and ran with it, and she paved the way for those to follow. And there were several other, Sherilyn Carroll came right after her. She's the big wheel at Texas A&M now in the media department out there. And so, there's several others that came, but she paved the way because she had the tenacity to do the job and do it right. I joined the Navy in 1951, which was just at the beginning of the end of Jim Crow, and the military had just brought in, desegregated the military. I'm over 100 years old, so so forgive me. But anyway, I experienced the first days of the integrated military on a small ship, and we were commissioned out of Port Arthur, Texas, and the crew assembled, and we were all bunking together and eating together and all that kind of stuff. And there were a lot of issues between the whites and the blacks. The first maybe 2 months, 6 weeks or sometime. But as it went along, those subsided, and the only difference in the crew was, we had the racks on the ship, and the bed come down like this, and on this side was a black fellow from Pennsylvania. His name was Les. And so I slept next to Les nearly for 4 years, and we got to be real great buddies. And but we couldn't go on Liberty together because everything else was segregated, the bars and the strip joints, wherever we all wanted to go. But anyway, it was an experience that, you know, after a certain length of time, it was just one another, just like it didn't make any difference. But getting back to the media, the movies started putting blacks into serious roles in the late 40s and real early 50s. And then in the latter 50s, they started racial bending and putting blacks in the hero spots with the whites as supporting actors and stuff like that. So the movies has been doing this for quite a while. But what the media does as far as bringing the opportunities picture to the young black people today is that they see them on newscasts, they hear them on the radio, they see them in the movies and hero roles and all this, and it gives them a say, I can do this. Whereas when this young lady come in, there was probably not one black youth in the country that would have said, I want to be on the radio and do newscast and be a part of it, because they did not believe that they had that opportunity. And they didn't really, but they did, but they didn't. You got to believe that you can open a door before you can turn the knob. I mean, it's just that simple. And if you watch today soap operas, in particularly, I've been watching, and I'm going to get my femininity going here, but I've been watching The Young and the Restless soap opera since the first day it aired, back, I don't know when, back in the early 60s or late 60s or something like that. But anyway, if you watch that now, nearly every couple is a mixed couple, and you know, and they're all in. Everybody is multimillionaires and can write a check and bounce a bank and all that good stuff. But that is what people watch, is what they see and believe, and that's the effect that opened up the door of getting and the same thing is with the Hispanic community too. The additional barrier with the Hispanic people is the language that they have to overcome sometimes. But
we don't.
sometimes we just speak Texas.
Could you repeat that, please? The question?
I just said that the Young and the Restless will never be as good as the Mexican soap operas.
She says that the Young and the Restless will never be as good as One thing I wanted to add to what Bill was saying is that not only was he able to show the African American community that they could do things by putting me on the radio, but he also showed the white community that they had to accept certain things. He told me one of my biggest assignments when I worked for him, and I was mad, I didn't want to do it. He said, you have to go cover the Willie Nelson picnic. It's out there at the Texas World Speedway, and you're gonna cover it. And I went, I don't want to do that. I just don't think that's the right thing for me to cover. He said, I said, why do you want me to do that? And he said, it'll be good for you. It'll be good, and it'll be good for them. So I did. I covered the Willie Nelson picnic and everything else that you can think of that went on in this community, including putting the microphone in the face of people who were criminals and who were on trial, and it's just everybody. Because I had to bring sound bites back to this.
You know, another success story was that I hired a young black fella out of high school as a sales first black salesperson in the media, and he went on to put his own radio station on there and become quite successful in the broadcast station ownership and things. So he had the opportunity, he learned, and he took advantage of it. And he saw, you know, back in those days, the political climate was such that being black opened up a lot of doors that was not necessarily open to other people. And he saw this opportunity, and he took and ran with it and made a success out of it. And so it's just a part of assimilating into the world, and I offend a lot of people sometimes because I don't and this is not intended to be political, it's just my view, is I don't know any African American people. I know black people that are American. I don't know any Mexican American people. I know Mexicans of Mexican descent. I don't know any Irish people that are Irish American. I know Irish people of Irish descent that are American. And to me, if we ever want to get a colorblind society, then we've got to start with the government and get rid of all this ridiculous, on every government form that you fill out, has, are you Alaskan,
white,
you,
black.
and I put out Native American, and you know, when they took that off, my choice now, I don't know whether you've looked at one lately, but for somebody with my skin color, my choice is a Mexican non-white, Hispanic non-white. So where do white folks go? but really, that if somebody's sitting up in Washington D.C. or in Austin, Texas, or wherever, and looking at the form, what difference does it make what their color might be?
Should be on there.
And that is, and the politicians use that for their benefit and not to benefit the citizens.
Oh, I worked in government programs. There is a really good reason for that. You're not required to do it. You can always not sign it. But that is the way we can track how much progress is being made. That's the way you can go back and see an employer's, if someone files a lawsuit alleging racial discrimination, you have a history of their hiring there if people fill the form out. The same with schools, a number of things. And, you know, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that data is used. And
Well, I know it's not necessarily used for good.
Yes, it is.
It's misused as much as it's
I don't
well
think
used.
it's,
So
I don't know.
so I don't want to get in that discussion because
No, I have to agree with
I'm
you.
controversial
Yeah,
enough.
I
to
agree with
go.
you, and the thing that's really annoying is that it says, if you can't ask, and you have to guess. So you have to guess, and when I lived in Hawaii, try guessing. You know, there's so many multitude of races and intermingling, but you can't ask, but you have to guess because you have to fill something out. So I totally agree with you. It's just,
Well, in California, where I live now, when you pay your utility bill, there are 14 language choices that you can make on one bill. And wow. And people don't need that. They don't really need all those language choices because they mostly speak English, but they have to do that because it's politically correct to identify each one of those racial choices. And it's a lot of paper, and it's a lot of time spent doing it. It's when you get on the phone, you got all these numbers to go through. You know, press 1 if you're Tagalog. If you press 2 if you whatever.
Yeah.
So, but we've gotten ourselves. It's a trap. We've gotten ourselves into a very, very bad racial trap. And like you said, there are reasons for keeping this data. There are reasons for cataloging people. But if we continue to go in that direction, like you were saying, we further the problem rather than helping to solve the problem because we're all hyphenated.
Well, one instance to give you an idea of how I'm so adamant against that is I had a radio station arranged, and it is basically Hispanic, probably 80 to 90%. And I had this young lady working for me, and I don't recall what her name was, so I'm going to say Rodriguez. And so we have to fill out these forms. This is in the late 70s or mid 70s, and I have to fill out because we have to hire people that matches the community. And so I have her down as a, at that time it was Spanish language, and I checked her off, and the next year she had married this gringo by the name of Green. And I checked her off on that as Hispanic. And I got a $5,000 fine because she didn't have a same person. Now I spent over $5,000 on attorney's fees and got it reversed. But it cost me $5,000 no matter which way you went, just because I didn't think to take her off of that because it's the same person, and I figured if she was a Hispanic before she married, she was still a Hispanic. Some way or another, that just adds up to being the way it is.
In the music business, in the music business, I know you have faced this kind of situation, traveling with bands that were multicultural and yes. Do you have any particular?
Well, I do run into, I'm a musician by trade, I'm a drummer and a vocalist, and I spent 12 years on the road touring the world and frequently ran into kind of the reverse issue, because sometimes I was the only marshmallow in the cocoa, and as my friend used to say, and I ran into some people who didn't expect me to be the drummer. We get up on stage and set up, and they put the guitar in front of my mic and the drum in front of the other mic, and my friend would go, I don't play no drum, and she'd be like, give me my guitar. And we ran into that a lot. Also, I have a fun story to tell about Taj Mahal. We opened for him one time, and came backstage afterwards to the green room, and he's sitting there smoking a cigar, and he's got a scotch in his hand. He's like,
You sure you're white? I ain't never seen no white girl play like that. And he was just joshing me because he doesn't usually, say stuff like that. But I used to run into that a lot. A lot of times people expected me to be something different because of the outer package. So the reverse is always true. I mean, you get kind of pigeonholed according to appearance. And that's where we fail each other in the human race. Making an assessment by looking at what is on the outside and responding the way we've been entrained by our errant culture. So, I'm here because I want to see people be aware of that and begin to make that change. To stop looking at appearances and making judgments and pigeonholing, and to realize that we are one race. We are the human race. We're a family. We are all related. We're all connected. The only difference is the way we treat each other, and that has to change. Yes.
How do we? I like to hear I like to hear your thoughts on having the first African American president of the United States and the treatment that he has received since his term of office. But not only that, when we talk about race relations and we talk about being part of the human race, just your thoughts on why he has been the most disrespected president in the history of America, and your thoughts on what will happen at the end of his term when Hillary Clinton becomes, and she'll be the first woman president.
Is that addressed to Sonny or?
We'll all take a stab at it. Okay. Barack Obama is the president of all of us, and I think that some people expected him to be the black president. They didn't expect him to be the president for all of us. And so when you have an expectation of something, you're always setting yourself up for a disappointment for that. He is the president, and that's how we should all think of him, as the president. But I don't think we can, because we are likely to see color first. And that's what you're talking about, getting past. That's what you're talking about, getting past. We've got to get past seeing color first. He's got to be the president of all of us. Hillary, if she becomes the next president, she's got to be president of all of us. We've got to get past seeing those physical differences and characteristics first. We've got to be able to see people for what they can do and what they can produce and how they can perform. Bill.
Well, I'm not going to be the most popular person in the room.
That's good.
I believe in what Martin Luther King said. You judge a person by their character and not by the color of their skin. And I personally judge our president, who happens to be black, by his character and not by his skin.
That's good. Good.
And how is that a follow-up question? And so how is that?
What?
How is?
Yeah, you judge him by his character. So what is your judgment? Give us a judgment call.
Oh, of the president?
Yeah, not you, son.
Oh. He's directed, he wants you to give him your impression of Barack Obama as a president, not as a black president, but as a president.
As a president, I think he has done more to destroy this country than anything that's ever happened.
How? Why?
See, now that's why we're having a panel.
That's why we're having a panel discussion.
I told you you wasn't going to be happy with it.
But what has he done to do that? What has he done to do that? No one's
Well,
told
can you look at our economic situation today?
Do what?
Can you look at our economic situation today? and you look at all of the new rules and regulations that are infringing on our liberty today,
What?
I mean, just look at what's going on around you.
The interesting thing is that if you had a white president behaving in a way that you didn't like, it would still be the same way.
If he, I don't care what color, what he's doing, I disagree with. I don't care if it's sky blue pink.
Okay.
Well,
That's,
how long do you think it would take to pay $10 trillion debt off? Whenever,
Well, whenever
He
you
didn't
raise
make
it
it.
by $3 a month forever.
Pardon me, as referee, that we are here to discuss the theme of interracial marriage.
right.
Also, I noticed in this film that the community was actually supportive of the couple. It was merely the law that worked against them. And as an audience, you might be thinking, if there currently are laws that you think are unfair, and if there are things that communities can do to protect the people they love and their choices, and perhaps begin with some discussions on community and fairness and, you know, working against things that perhaps the community does not feel is right.
is there anyone in the audience who has had an issue being a biracial couple and who has had, okay. Tell us about it.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I go to Texas A&M, and I'm in the Corps of Cadets. I'm the only, well, I'm from Africa as well. I'm the only African person in my outfit. But they don't think that I associate with other races because they only see me with African American people. At Texas A&M, it's not that many African American people, so when you see one with the other, you think, oh, you're constantly hanging out with those people. And they don't know that I've dated a Caucasian person, and I'm currently in a relationship, kind of, with a Latino guy. So my thing is, how do I go about staying true to myself, because I am an African and I'm proud to be Black and African, but at the same time letting my core buddies who are nothing but Caucasians understand that I respect everything that is, I don't honestly see color. And so it's a difficulty that I have.
I think that's probably a difficult issue that a lot of people have. Before the Loving case was decided, it was against the law for Black people and non-Black people, or however you want to say it, to even be friends. They could be prosecuted just for being friends, just for hanging out together. Going to coffee or something like that would have been against the law, and they couldn't go to the same bars, they couldn't do anything together because it was against the law. To be friends, not only to be married, but to, and of course the workplace, because workplaces were segregated. And so what we're doing now is trying to rise above what we were before. And it's difficult. It's really difficult because we sometimes just see the color. We just hear the language. Anything that makes someone a little bit different from someone else, if it's the way they speak, if it's the way they dress, if it's their religion, all those things play in. And Jim Crow laws were not just against Black people. They were against any people who were a little bit different. And at one time in this country, everybody was different. The only people who weren't different were Native Americans. And so we have to still overcome all of that, even though we've been through, it seems like an eternity, but it hasn't been. It seems like, we were talking about it just a little bit ago, it seems like ancient history that this couple was going through what they were going through. But to us, it's not ancient history.
It's in our lifetime.
It's in our lifetime. It's recent history. It really is.
Very recent.
And each one of us has done something to make a difference in the way we are perceived, or the way our society is perceived. And we can be different and still have discussion and still be friends. Bill and I, you would never put us together as somebody who, as best friends. But he's probably as good a friend to me as I've ever had. You know, he claims to be a redneck. You know, that's his own title for himself. But that father is a redneck. He's a black redneck. You know, so we all have some similarity. My father rides a horse. My father is a cowboy. I mean, you can't get any more redneck than that, even though he's black. Bill, you know, is this kind of person who knows very deeply humanity. And he would never have done for me what he did if he didn't know humanity. And his advertisers up and left him when he hired me. They did. They took off. Because he was doing something that they didn't agree with. They just didn't agree with him sending out somebody like me to cover them. And so they left him. And I didn't know it at the time. But he was really having a financial struggle at that time because his advertisers were not as plentiful as they had been. They eventually crawled back when they knew things had to change. You know. Yes.
I thought one of the more interesting things about the Loving film, and it wasn't in the clip that we saw, but it's in the full movie, and I think it was one of the ACLU guys who said that if you met Richard Loving and saw him, you would think he was a redneck.
Yes.
He looked like a redneck. He was a guy with a short haircut, big neck, and literally a redneck.
Well, they mentioned that in the film, that the lawyer didn't like him at first because he looked like a redneck.
He was the last.
I told Sonny, I'm the only one here that's mentioned in that film.
Well, as somebody who comes from a long line of rednecks, you know.
Well, if you're a Texan, you're a redneck. I don't care what color you are.
All my people were from Alabama, and they were rednecks. Let me tell you.
Are there any other people that have had a personal experience that they can share?
Sid, I wanted to respond to this young woman. As an Aggie who was with one of the first groups of women who went to A&M, you're breaking barriers right now. It is their problem, honey. It is not your problem. And you be loyal to yourself and you make friends all the way. You're breaking into the hardest group at A&M you can break into. So, I mean, there aren't very many, and I know a lot of women in this room are tough, but we wouldn't have gotten into the Corps. We wouldn't have made it in the Corps. So, you know, bless you for doing that.
Hi, I'm Renee. I'm also in the Corps. And my experience kind of goes along with it. When I transferred here and I was a fish in the Corps, me and my buddies went out to dinner. And one of them, white guy, me and him connected immediately. We weren't dating or anything. We were friends. We were going out to dinner. We went by ourselves so we could talk about political science things because that's my major. And I feel like it's kind of funny that we say College Station is more progressive because it was when we went out. No, how they mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more progressive because when we went out together, immediately we got looks and stuff. We weren't even dating. We weren't standing next to each other or anything. We were just walking as friends to the place that we were going. And we immediately got looks and people were we sat down and they were just kind of watching us the whole time. It was weird. And I guess I wasn't, it didn't really bother me much because I'm from Alabama where it's very, very country. I was in the rural area. So I've been called the N-word for dating a white guy and all that kind of stuff. So it didn't really bother me as much. I just found it interesting how I came here and I thought it would be a little bit better and it wasn't. Because we were friends and we got the looks and the stares the whole time in College Station. I was we're young, can we get past this thing? And there was people my age that were sitting there staring at us. It was just odd.
You got to move.
I would like to say something to this young lady here that's in the Corps. You're much like Sonny, and you're paving the way for a lot of people to follow. So there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, whether you like it or not. And what happens down the road in that regard is going to be your courage, your tenacity, and your leadership, as it was Sonny's, to break the way and make it easier for those in 40 years. You're going to look back and say, look what I did. You're going to have a lot of funny stories to tell.
Oh, I already do. They ask me all kinds of
questions. Like they asked me all kinds of, my buddies, 'cause I'm the only black like female in our outfit. They asked me all kinds of questions. Why do you do your hair like that? Why do you wrap it up like that? Like, and I don't have any issues with it because I feel like they should ask questions instead of like inferring or assuming things. Like I like that they ask questions and want to know why I do certain things or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to say that there's been so many things said, but I think we should make a distinction between the stories of Mr. Loving, and that name is very interesting, Loving itself, but the stories Clyde was telling in Irving from Seattle, and having lived in that area, sort of, it made her kind of a bit naive about what goes on between black and, on multiracial issues. And you gals talk to me, I was also in that court. Let's chat afterwards. All that. But what I want to ask is, Mr. Watkins, in the South, at the time when you did hire Sonny, why did you want her voice at the time? Why did you hire her?
Why?
Yes.
Because I wanted a good professional sounding voice on the air, doing the authoritative voice to do the news. The sound female newscaster.
But you knew you were going to lose, you had to make a business calculation, right?
But you didn't know she was black when you called her in for the interview.
My question is, given what you were going to be facing by hiring her and her having a black voice and a black face and all of it, and the status of your local audience and how they see and thought about things and the businesses that were advertising and what you were going to face, why did you go ahead and take that jump and risk is the question now.
Did you know that she was black? No. That should be the first question.
He did not know I was black until I walked into the office.
But afterwards, he didn't stop it either. He still went on knowing the risks. And I just was very interested in why he would take such a risk.
Well, I guess one of the best answers I could come up with, that's a real good question. And and when you hear that it's a good question, you know that I'm stammering for time to think. But if you are walking alone, sometimes that's better than to walk with a crowd. If the crowd's going in the wrong direction.
Right. Amen.
I work for KWHI KTEX 106, which we know is country and western on both ends. And I was an account executive, and I used to sell advertising times here at Bryan College Station, Washington County. And to answer the young lady question about Bryan being the most progressive, when you look at the different counties, the surrounding 6 counties, Bryan is more progressive than the counties that are around.
Yes.
And so I ran into the same situation. This is in 1996, 97, 98. And they told me I could not sell radio advertising to you rednecks, that's their words, being a black guy. And so I know what Sonny encountered, what she would encounter, plus she knows my father's history. So we have in that area, you're going to encounter racism. And when you start talking about interracial, that's the problem we have right there. We need to get away from interracial, because if two people love each other, they love each other, irregardless of what their skin tone color is. It's not about the color of their skin, it's about love. I can get my radio voice.
You sound just like your father. His father was George Nelson Sr. And I met George Nelson. He was Groovy George when I met him, because he was a disc jockey at KYOK radio station in Houston.
And I had won a contest, and he was the one who emceed the show and presented me with a scholarship. I don't even think you were born at that time.
Yeah.
Were you born? This was in 1965, and you were just a baby. Anyway, go ahead.
To answer your question or follow up on what you said, when I hired this black salesman back in the early, late 60s, I had someone call up and tell me, he said, I don't like the M-word, and I don't want them calling on me. And I said, well, he don't like them either. And then I went to Joe and I told him what happened. And I said, you go down there right now and you go and make the best sales pitch you ever made in your life to that guy. And you go down there and see him at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever time you choose to see him every day until he buys something. And he turned into one of the better accounts on the station because of that. And it's persistence, tenacity, and character. It gets back to character of what, I mean, he could have folded like a willow, and but he built on that. He had the character to build on. And everybody, I don't care who they are, appreciates that. They may get angry at it, and they may put up a resistance at it, but they appreciate someone's determination and persistence because it shows character, and that's what it's all about.
One thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm not politically correct in my...
Another question back there.
Yeah, I just want to add a few things here about see, actually, I was working at the Radio Shack when Sonny did the ad, and the idea was it was no problem with Sonny and I because we were married, and I just wanted a good voice, so the color made no sense. But what was unique to that was the fact that I was the only black manager of major retail in the whole area. So when you heard the voice, you heard the good voice. And we were both seeking the same thing. We both wanted to sell items. And I think that's what happens. You decide it's time for change. And you buck the storm. And that's what makes things happen. To you young people at the Aggies, I'm going to invite you and your unit to come to the museum, because we will definitely take care of any issues you have.
Yeah, it all boils down to the quality of the person and what they're trying to achieve and what product they have to sell. And that's what Wayne was selling at Radio Shack. He was selling products and goods, and he wanted to have those things represented by a certain sound. When Bill heard the sound, he wanted that sound on his station. It didn't matter to him once he met me that I was a black woman. It mattered to him that he would have the voice that he wanted on his station.
There's another question.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's been an interesting conversation so far, looking at specific issues like interracial relationships, Jamila too and Renee, and the issues with the core, race and advertising and radio stations and television stations, and these specific things are very important. But I just wanted to say that we need to remember that these are all issues in larger contexts. Institutions, interracial relationships, and all of these things are microcosms of the larger issues. And it is interesting and elevating to think about post-racialism, because that's what some of the suggestions have gone to in terms of not looking at people specifically for who they are racially. You're not African American, you're American who's black. You're not Hispanic, you're Mexican you are American who is of Mexican descent. These things are wonderful in an ideal world, and that is pointing to post-racialism, which individually I hope will happen in the world. But the reality is that we are still grappling with these issues. So we are nowhere near post-racialism. And that is why there is that discourse, and in my field I'm a historian who studies race, ethnicity, and immigration. In my discipline, there is this huge discourse. In fact, it's not just one discourse, a number of discourses about post-racialism. If we are there yet, my answer is no, we are not there yet. But if we are going to get there, how are we going to get there? So I just think that the significance of why we're here, to the documentary on interracial relationships, I think is just a statement that we are saying that this happened in the 1950s and in the 1960s, but we are not there yet because we are still grappling with some of these things. So post-racialism is still a dream.
That's very correct. The Loving case decided, which was decided in 1967, was supposed to destroy the last vestige of Jim Crow in America. Yeah, supposed. However, laws can be destroyed. Laws can be written and laws can be destroyed. But feelings and attitudes take a lot longer to destroy than a law, because a law can be stricken with a pen stroke. But people's attitudes and what's in their heart cannot be stricken with a pen. It takes time.
Some of these laws seem to be even coming back in different
forms. Absolutely.
That's daunting.
Absolutely.
Look at
Absolutely.
The voting laws and things like that are coming up now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I wasn't going to say much, but I was married to a black man, Woody Jones, some of you that knew him. And so I brought it up just because I was in a marriage. The one thing that I noted is, I'm originally from New York, but I met Woody in San Diego. And there was an assumption, there were a couple assumptions. Number one is that his family would not be happy. But more importantly, I think, or even more across the board, everyone assumed my family would be very, very upset. And we had no problems with any of our families. I mean, I had some extended family members, and so did he, that were not thrilled about it. But outside of that, really, we had a lot of support in our family. There was another assumption that, that in California we wouldn't have problems, and we did. I mean, I also one time went to dinner with a coworker, and that was the first time I noticed. I mean, people stopped. Yeah, this was in San Diego, and they stopped to watch us. I was seated by the kitchen, and I can tell you, I dated many years before I married Woody, and dated all kinds of people. But the only times, I mean, it was consistent that no matter where we went out for a restaurant, I was by the kitchen or the bathroom. Never happened to me. And I didn't marry Woody till I was 32. So then I got to the point that he would say, is this okay with you? And I'd say, no. And invariably I would see children or people of color. But the whites sat in the front or more, and I said, I'm not sitting here anymore. So that was one thing I noted. I noted it in Texas, I noted it in Houston, I noticed it, wherever we traveled, I did note that. And so when my friends would say to me, oh, Mary, you're just being, I'd say, no, I'm not. I've had this experience that I can tell that when I'm with someone else, I'm seated not in the best seat. But the other thing is that, we certainly had problems here. We did. But we also had a very good life together. And we were very blessed that our families were very, very supportive. New Yorkers, people would say to me, and I would also have lots of people. I used to work as the director of nursing at Scott & White, and everyone would ask me like, oh, once they saw Woody, because I wouldn't say anything at first, but once they did, and they always want to ask me questions. And I thought it was good because I was educating them, and they would think that New York would be horrible because, they were racist. And that wasn't true, even though they were. You knew, because they'd tell you, you knew if they liked it or they didn't like it, or they would wait to say anything, but here too, I mean, I had lots of people from getting my nails done and my hair cut, and you know, and it was sort of like a good Christian woman, and, you know, there were lots of assumptions of who I was. I mean, I had things like, we didn't expect, you know, someone like you to be married to a black man. You know, I mean, there were all kinds of comments. All kinds of comments. But in any case, so there's stereotypes. You know, my mother, two other things, very short-lived. My mother would tell me, although she was the person that when I first dated a person of color told me, be best friends, just don't kiss. It's okay for everybody else, but you'll have a hard life. But my father raised us differently. But anyway, but she also said to me, Mary, you know, it's not logical. You know, there's a deeper problem with, especially with interracial marriage, there's a deeper emotional workings that's going on, and people are responding to fear, to the unknown. You know, it's not anything you can convince them of by talking, you know. And then the only last thing is, Woody used to always say to me, well, one thing he told me at Scott and White, he used to say to me, Mary, it's not your duty to educate everyone. You know, you don't have to do that all the time. But the other thing he did say to me that I remember occasionally, that's the reason why I spoke, is he would say to me, Mary, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So you can't always remain quiet.
One of the things that my father always told me was not to always fall back on the race question. He said, sometimes you may not be doing the very best you can. You have to start to rely on something else and not using color or using gender as an excuse. You know, they put me by the kitchen a few times in restaurants. You know, but then I would see other people beside the bathroom door, and they weren't black. And so if you are black, or if you are in a couple that's part, you know, half of your couple is black, you have to think about, why am I being marginalized or feeling minimal? If you're not part of that group, then you don't have to think about it. You know that you're being treated badly just because you're being treated badly. You know, it's a real fine line that we have to walk when you're in a relationship where you or your partner is not the same race as you. You have to really think about it. And who wants to spend time thinking about something like that? You just want to go about your business and live your life.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes.
Oh, I just want to mention this because no one else has, but hi, Mary. Halima, Mary, and I have a daughter. They look very much alike. And that is that I adopted a biracial child. So not only am I white with a biracial child, but I'm an old lady. And so I don't know what's, you know, I think I grapple mostly with, is that your grandmother? She was like, no, you know, of course. I don't know how this is all going to come out, so I don't have any words of wisdom. She's 15, she's delightful. I've seen a lot, she's seen a lot. She's very light-skinned, and I could have, I made this decision. She came when she was 2.5 weeks old. And I could have decided to say, and since I was going to be very open about her adoption, I could have said she was Hispanic, Hawaiian. It was suggested to me by some of the social workers, you know, different scenarios. And I said, you know, I just have this feeling you're part African American, and that's what I went with. Knowing I was going to put her through some issues. But I didn't think it would matter what she said she was, because people were going to judge her based on what she looked like anyway. So far, so good, but you know, we're learning every day.
It's difficult when you have to raise a child who does not look like you, who might be a different color than you. And I can only imagine what it must be like if I was raising a child that's young enough to be my grandchild. So you have, all those issues play into it. It takes some preparation in your own mind to be able to go out and face the world with that, and also to tell the child and prepare the child for what they might face being seen with you, or calling you mom, because people are judgmental.
They are, a little bit. Not everybody. My granddaughter, my partner and I are raising my granddaughter. She's 7 now. We've had her since she was 6 months old. And she is a little tow-headed, just white blonde hair, green eyes, ball of joy, just no fear. She's just an incredible person. And she hangs out with her papa on a regular basis. And they go to the mall, and they go to the library, and they go to movies together, and they have so much fun. And they go to the chocolate factory, they have so much fun together. And for a while, there was that feeling, he got, some raised eyebrows, because one of these things is not the same. And in fact, he had an experience in a Starbucks where there was a guy just staring at them, because she's sitting there in her stroller, he's reading the paper, reading the Wall Street Journal, and the guy just keeps staring at him, and he's got this little white baby. And he finally looked over the paper at the guy and went, eBay. And he went back. So that put an end to that. But she doesn't see difference. She doesn't see that as her papa, and God help the person that tries to get between them, because they are inseparable. And I am so lucky to have that person in my life helping me raise that beautiful little child. My son once said something. We were sitting in the Post Oak Mall. Before I knew Chicken McNuggets had 36 ingredients. And he was looking at all the people in the mall, and there were a lot of people, all kinds of people. And he said, "Mommy, everybody's a different color of brown." He didn't say there's a white person, a black person. He just said everybody's a different color of brown. And it's kind of true. And my granddaughter Madison made the same point. Kids, if we saw the world through children's eyes and we stopped telling them how to think, things would be very different right now. Because my granddaughter put her hand on a piece of paper and she said, "Yayo, I'm not white. This is white. I'm light brown. And Papa's dark brown." We're all brown. So kids, 2 kids that I know said the same thing. So, yeah, I think that if we tell the children they should see things as incorrect that are different, then they'll grow up thinking that. But if we tell them that this is beautiful and everybody should just love everybody, and you shouldn't be looking at what's on the outside but what's in here, I'm just hoping that message is getting through to anyone who might still be in that place today.
Yes, I just want to thank you all for coming. We're going to be wrapping up the program now. If you have some more questions and discussions, you're welcome to stay for another about 30 minutes. The library will be closing at 5. But I also want to give special thanks to Larry Kenninger for finding this program and bringing it to the library. And I want to thank Nan Ross, who is the director of the Carnegie, for supporting me in putting this together. And I want to thank Kathy Nixie. I believe she helped. She is the director of the Larry Ringer Library, for finding this program and getting the grant for it. And I think Nan has something to say to kind of wrap up. And then again, as I said, you're welcome to stay and continue discussing.
The thing I've taken away from this particular event is that we all really, really need to be probably out there out front, making a difference and acting when we see things that we see are wrong, and getting off our tushes, acting and speaking up. and not let this go on. Don't let people say, well, there's so-and-so or so-and-so, or they've got white shoes on and a pink shirt and it's a guy. Don't, you know, none of your business. What goes on in people's lives or what kind of makeup they do or don't have on is quite simply none of your business. And let them leave them, and tell them to leave people alone.
Other questions? Okay, we'll continue. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, some of the people in the back don't have a college hearing, so that's why we're doing.
Okay.
So they don't have.
Well, I just have a comment to make on your name, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, she was saying for her great-great-great-grandfather.
Great-great-grandfather.
Okay, and see, I have discussed it lots of times on my job with my coworkers and everything when we get into racial issues or whatever, nothing bad. But I tell them all the time that you don't know your heritage, your genealogy or whatever, and you can't look at somebody and say, you look at you look white. But no, yeah, you can. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, you don't know your descendants, you don't know where you came from, you can't be prejudiced because you don't know who your relatives are.
That's right.
You don't know where you came from. And you can't, I mean, I tell them all the time, you can't just look at somebody and say, I'm white because, or my mother's white, or my daddy is white, we're both white, I mean, or both black or whatever. But you look down your family tree, and I've tried to look down mine, but I can't find all my relatives, so I don't know a lot about them. But if you look down your family tree, you can't, I'm just saying you can't feel a certain way or a certain way about people because of, as you say, the outside. So I'm just saying, look at your family tree and you can love everybody the same. Oh yeah, you might be related to them.
Any more questions? Anybody or comments? Do I see any? Okay, here we go.
I just have a comment as somebody who's here from Africa and living in the United States and just observing. I think we can't talk about race without talking about power. It's a power issue, and as long as there's power differentials, we'll always see difference. So even the idea of a post-racial world is lofty and dreamy. And so we need to be realistic. But I think how I boil it down for myself is to say that there is no world. There's only 6 billion variations and understandings of it, and therefore I am responsible for the person that is immediately before my face to impact, rather than this larger community that's standing out there that we all say they. We could say they all day long. But the question comes down to, what are you doing with the person that is in front of you right now? So let's talk, not the government, not anybody else but you.
Anybody else? Any more questions?
Like 7 billion. Yeah.
And first thing I want to say is I'm so glad that I came out of my cave today. It's exciting, the program, and this thing on is exciting. Okay. And 2 cents that I have to offer is this, that we are in a transition zone. Transition, going from one place to another place. That's what the Loving case was when it finally got to court in 1967. It was in a transition zone. There were traditions and habits and ways of living that were standardized for more than 200 years in the United States. The miscegenation came back after race laws. My friend from Africa was talking about government. Well, governments are groups of people who happen to agree most of the time. So you might say governments are friends with similar ideas. So they get together and say black folks can't marry. And then there comes another group of people who says, black folks can't marry white folks. Indians can't marry white folks. That becomes law because people come to an agreement.
Okay, we're in a transition zone. And you, Bill, were in the Navy in '51, so was my father. Came home on leave, and here I am, okay? 61 years later. And this road is just traveled. From, we talk about interracial stuff, and when I was 20, I was in the Nation of Islam, before Elijah Muhammad died. And one of my great things, that I lived in the Bahamas in the 1960s, when in Florida, where I'm from, there was segregation. In the Bahamas, there was no segregation. So at 11 years old, I had a chance to see the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, da-da-da-da, except men meant white folks with property, white men with property. But that's not the case now, because when that was written, mothers couldn't vote for their sons to be presidents or governors or senators or anything. We are in a transition zone, and I keep coming back to that because there's two words that kind of hit me, Bill, media man that you are. There's evolution, always in the news, and revolution. Revolution, you kind of go back where you started from by definition. You go around in a circle. So we go from America before those laws, when people lived together, worked together, had babies together, got married together, and then we came to that America that was based on race. And now, as we evolve, that is, go to a higher level, we're getting back to the point where we say, you know, people should make their decision and live by the content of their character, not by the decisions of some twisted friends. I served on Bryan's school board for about 12 years. And one day there came a day when some children who had passed all requirements except passing the TOS test and wanted to participate in the commencement exercise. The board decided they could not because we had a local policy that says unless you pass the TOS test, you cannot participate in the commencement exercise. That became a tempest in the teapot, and I was advocate for those people saying, hey, look, they have all the credit. Some people can't pass tests. Maybe they're stuck. My wife has a master's degree. She cannot pass a test, so she couldn't become a teacher, so she became a human resource person. Transition, to be aware that we are changing, we are evolving. That America where all Americans are Americans together hasn't happened yet. But we are now sensitive. A lot of people in here are over 40, like myself. So we're grown folk.
One thing I want to mention is in this transition that we're in, when I graduated from A&M, there was time for me to move on from my part-time job with Bill at WTAW. And he recommended that I go and interview with the station manager at the television station here in Bryan. We only had one at that time. And but Bill knew him, and he called him up and said, I'm going to send her over to interview with you because I know you have an opening. And it was, he assumed, and I know he assumed that the man would at least give me a hearing. When I got there, I walked into the room, and I knew immediately that this man was not going to give me a hearing. And it had been 4 years, almost 4 years, since I walked into Bill's office, and he took like 2 seconds to recover because he didn't know who he was going to be talking to, and sent me out on my first assignment. This was 4 years later. That we're supposed to be in a transition where they're getting used to the idea that a black person can be on the news. And I knew I wasn't going to get the job at the television station. He immediately told me, no, the community is not ready for you.
Yes.
So I went back, and Bill asked me, he said, what did he say? And I told him, I said, he told me the community is not ready for me to be on television. He said, he's wrong. The community is ready for you, and you've been on radio for 4 years. And they know that you're out there. The community has been ready. But see, transition doesn't happen just because you have people who say things must change. Transition can only happen when you have people who are persistent. When I left that station, Bill hired another black woman. And then he hired another black woman after her. I mean, he was persistent. And now we do have African Americans on television here. But it wouldn't have happened if somebody hadn't just kept pushing the point. Just sticking them out there anyway. Just get on out there and do it.
And that's funny. Thank you for that segue, because in that transition zone, to be aware that you are making that change to another level is very important. We do it by instinct, but when we're conscious, it goes so much better. So let me wrap my piece up with this. Okay. I set out for the Nation of Islam at 20. Well, at 60, I discovered that I have 3 children, 2 are married, all of their in-laws are white, and all of my grandbabies are biracial. And I realized that I, as one of the older people in the world nowadays, have a responsibility to make this world a better place, and knowing, like Sonny just said, that people don't just change instantly. But if you're aware that the change is for the good, it's worth putting forth the effort and making the best example, like Mr. Watkins did. He knows, like the guy with the Celtics did, like the guy with the Dodgers did. You know something needs to happen to take us to a better place, so you just hunker down and get it done at your level. And expect the resistance and don't get mad, because those are habits that have been established long before you showed up. But let's make the transition evolutionarily, not revolutionary, because we need to go to a higher level, not just back where we started from. So thank you for giving me the minutes. Thank y'all for putting on the program.
No, thank you.
I just wanted to ask you a question, like, we're looking at interracial marriages or interracial whatever. Okay, why is it, now maybe I've learned it through the years, I just don't know. Interracial marriage is not only between black races and white races, right?
No.
Okay, why is the interracial marriage between the black race and the white race such a big issue? I mean, you know what?
It's a power, and it's based on power and wealth.
Okay.
And also, during the colonial times, interracial children, the children that were the result of an interracial relationship, had to be considered illegitimate. So you have to illegitimize the marriage or the union so that the children would continue to be illegitimate.
Okay.
It was a matter of keeping the power in a certain class.
Okay, but I mean, black and white, black and Mexican, black and whatever, white and whatever. I mean, it was not as a bigger issue as it is.
It's a matter of wealth.
I grew up in South Texas, the quote-unquote token white. I'm not white, but I was the token white. And because my skin was so much lighter, some people considered me white, and when I would date a Hispanic boy, all hell broke loose. And my parents would look at them and say, "What's the deal? They've grown up together." Some people fear anything that gives even the slightest bit difference. And if you can take that difference and use it to make you more powerful, people will do it.
How are we doing on time?
About 4:15, 4:20, so we will officially for sure close the doors. I think we're having a great time. Thank you. The little green bookmark size, it has the dates and the other shown, that will be shown.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? It's Hello, may I have your attention, please? I want to let you know that the show is available on T-SPAN.
and it'll be, it's up now. It was on live stream, and then when you go to the T-SPAN's website, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing it.
Is that better?
Turn it off. When you go to the T-SPAN website. It's on now. Go to the T-SPAN website and look on the archive. Video library, and you can get the entire program for download or for viewing. That's T-SPAN. That's the Texas State Public Affairs Network. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Since you're such a lovely young lady, I'm going to give you my card. Most women have to spend 5 months.